Welcome to Revisit Books podcast, where we turn books into bite-sized wisdom you can use every day.
Welcome, everyone. We are starting an in-depth conversation today on a book that, well, it doesn't just offer productivity tips. It really fundamentally challenges our whole philosophy of work, maybe even success itself.
That's right.
We're looking at Essentialism, The Disciplined Pursuit by Greg McKeown. It came out back in 2014.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? We're talking about this now a good decade later, and I think the core problem McKeown identified, the sheer overload of information, of opportunity, it's only gotten, louder, more intense. The whole philosophy of essentialism, if you boil it right down, it's those three simple words: less but better.
Less but better.
It's this disciplined, almost kind of spiritual pursuit, really, to find the one thing that will make your highest possible contribution, the thing that truly matters. And then, and this is the hard part, ruthlessly ignoring everything else. Everything that doesn't serve that specific aim. That sounds incredibly appealing. I mean, especially for listeners out there who feel like they're just constantly running, just to stay in the same place.
Mm-hmm.
And McKeown hits us right away with this central dilemma, doesn't he? He calls it the paradox of success.
Right, and importantly, we're not talking about people who are, failing here.
No.
We're talking about really intelligent, ambitious people. People who are actually paralyzed by their own success.
How does that work?
Well, it's this sort of toxic cycle that a lot of high achievers can fall into. Think about it. When you start out, you're often successful precisely because you focus intently on one thing. Right?
Makes sense.
But then that success brings more opportunities, more requests, more emails. And you feel this pressure, maybe internal, maybe external, to say yes to all these new things.
Right. You don't want to miss out or let people down.
Exactly. But here's the paradox McKeown points out. Saying yes to something that's actually non-essential often gets immediately rewarded. Socially, people think, oh, they're so helpful, so agreeable. But saying no, which is often the essential behavior, protecting your focus, that can be temporarily punished. It feels awkward, maybe you feel guilty, or you worry someone's disappointed.
So we actually reward ourselves for the bad behavior, the non-essential stuff, and kind of punish ourselves for the good, focused behavior.
Precisely. And over time, this adds up. It leads to this disastrous cumulative effect. Really high stress, constantly feeling rushed. You see a definite drop in the quality of your actual work.
Yeah.
And you get that pervasive feeling that you're, as McKeown puts it, majoring in minor activities. You're busy, you might even feel productive, but you're doing brilliant work on tasks that ultimately just don't move the needle on what really matters. Meanwhile, your one essential goal, it stalls.
Wow. So the essentialist mindset, then, it's the escape route from that whole paradox.
It is.
And the escape route isn't like finding a better to-do list app or typing faster.
No, it's much deeper. It's about fundamentally regaining control over the choices that actually define your life, your work, your contribution.
So taking back the steering wheel.
Pretty much. The non-essentialist, maybe without even realizing it, lets other people's priorities, their demands, their overflowing inboxes control their time. It happens by default.
Correct.
The essentialist, though, consciously steps back. They reclaim what the book calls the invincible power of choice. They basically say, hold on, I am going to deliberately eliminate the non-essentials so I can take back my power and choose the thing, the activity, the project that truly represents my highest contribution.
And not just for their career.
Absolutely not. It's about their highest contribution to their whole life, their family, their community, whatever matters most to them.
Okay, so if this isn't just another business book, who is it really for? Who's the kind of person listening right now who might get the biggest breakthrough from this essentialist way of thinking?
Well, I think we can sketch out a few maybe common profiles. The first one is probably the most familiar in today's world.
Oh.
The exhausted overachiever. This isn't someone you need to, motivate to work harder. They're already working incredibly hard. Often, they're right on the edge of burnout, or maybe they've even crossed it.
They've hit that wall. They're putting in more hours, making more sacrifices, but they've reached that point of, diminishing returns?
Exactly that. The extra effort just isn't producing significantly more results. Maybe even fewer results sometimes. They feel like they're on a treadmill. And the intuition is often, if I just push a little harder, I'll break through. But the book argues quite powerfully that the real breakthrough often requires the opposite. It requires stopping, reflecting, and consciously choosing to do less work on all the wrong things.
Okay.
So you can do more focused, intentional work on the right thing. It's the difference between just brute force and real strategic leverage.
Right. And then there's the profile the author himself admits he fell into, the straddler.
Yes, the straddler. This is the person, or it could be a whole organization, who's afraid to fully commit. They think success lies in keeping all options open, in diversifying everything.
Hedging their bets.
Precisely. McKeown talks about his own experience trying to juggle rigorous law studies and keeping up with management reading and pursuing his passion for writing, all at the same time. Now, he wasn't necessarily failing badly at any single one, but he wasn't truly succeeding or gaining real momentum in any of them either. He was stuck in the middle, basically diluting his energy, his focus, his resources across these competing priorities.
Yeah, I think that resonates, especially now maybe with the gig economy or just demanding careers where you feel like you have to collect skills and responsibilities, just in case. But the moment you try to straddle like that, you never really get the full force of momentum behind any one thing.
You never do.
Yeah.
You end up being sort of, maybe competent in several areas instead of potentially world-class or at least deeply impactful in one.
Yeah.
And the last key audience, I think, is what we could call the unwitting non-essentialist.
The unwitting non-essentialist.
Yeah. This is basically anyone who looks at their calendar, looks at their to-do list, and has that sinking feeling, whose life am I actually living? They realize their schedule is largely controlled by other people's requests, other people's agendas. They haven't really given themselves permission to be more selective.
That's a really key word there. Permission. Why do we feel we need permission to be selective with our own time and energy?
Well, it goes back to that social paradox we talked about, doesn't it? We're often conditioned to believe that being competent means having infinite capacity. If you're good at your job, people just assume you have endless time to take on their problems, their projects.
Right. You're so efficient, can you just...
Exactly. The non-essentialist tends to be very reactive, always responding to the latest email, the loudest request, the squeakiest wheel. The essentialist, on the other hand, recognizes a fundamental truth. If I don't proactively define what my highest contribution is, trust me, someone else will gladly use my time and talents to fulfill theirs.
So it's fundamentally about giving yourself that permission to stop just reacting and start deliberately designing how you spend your focus.
Yes, it's really a kind of manifesto for personal agency, for ensuring your life is shaped by conscious choices, by design, rather than just drifting along by default.
Okay, let's dive into the principles then. Starting with what feels like maybe the most uncomfortable truth. Essentialism forces us to confront the idea that we just cannot have it all or do it all. But you're saying that acknowledging that is actually the start of the invincible power of choice.
That's exactly where the liberation begins, paradoxically. Because real strategy, whether you're talking business strategy like Michael Porter defined it or life strategy, is fundamentally about making deliberate choices. And crucially, making deliberate trade-offs.
Trade-offs, not just choices, but actively giving something up.
Yes. The non-essentialist is always trying to find a clever way to do both A and B. The essentialist looks at two competing, maybe equally good options and asks that really tough question. Okay, which problem do I actually want to solve? Or which trade-off am I willing to make?
And the book uses a classic business example to illustrate this really clearly. Southwest Airlines, especially under Herb Kelleher.
Oh, it's a perfect case study. Kelleher's strategy wasn't just, let's try to be low cost. It was built on this foundation of extreme clarity about what they absolutely would not do. They made some really significant trade-offs, consciously, by design.
Like what?
Well, they decided they would only fly point-to-point routes, not the complex hub-and-spoke system other airlines used. That simplified things enormously. They had no assigned seats first come, first served, no meals on board, just peanuts. And maybe most critically, from an operational standpoint, they only used one type of aircraft, the Boeing 737.
Which saves massively on maintenance, training, parts.
Hugely. Now, did they lose some customers who wanted a fancy meal or a complicated itinerary connecting through a hub? Absolutely. Yes, they did. But every single one of those choices, those trade-offs, reinforced their essential priority. Quick aircraft turnarounds, super low operating costs, and ultimately affordable fares for customers. They knew exactly what game they were playing.
Yet then the flip side. What happens when a competitor tries to sort of dip their toe in, tries to get the low fares without making those same painful trade-offs?
Ah, yes. This brings us to the critical cautionary tale of Continental Light. Continental Airlines saw Southwest's success and thought, hey, we want some of that low-cost market. So they tried to enter it by removing some of the frills, like meals, and lowering their fares on certain routes.
Okay, seems reasonable on the surface.
Yeah. But, and this is the crucial difference, They kept their existing, expensive, incredibly complex operational model. They still had the hub and spoke system. They still flew multiple types of aircraft. They kept assigned seating. Their fundamental infrastructure was completely incompatible with a true low-cost strategy. They were just making sacrifices around the margins, as the book says, not making those deep, essential trade-offs.
And the result was?
Total chaos. Operationally inefficient, financially disastrous. They lost hundreds of millions of dollars. And the customer experience was so bad, apparently they were generating something like 1,000 customer complaints a day.
1,000 a day. Wow.
It just proves the point so vividly. Trying to operate based on two fundamentally incompatible strategies doesn't work. It's unsustainable, it's expensive, and it usually fails.
And that failure, you could argue, is mirrored in our own lives, right? When someone tries to be the absolute perfect, always available spouse, and the star employee working 80 hours a week and training for a marathon and volunteering extensively.
Yes. That person is basically running Continental Light in their own life. They're trying to maybe cut out a small, non-essential here or there, like, okay, I'll skip watching TV tonight. But they're unwilling to change the underlying, fundamentally unsustainable operating model of trying to be everything to everyone.
That really brings it home. Now, speaking of clarity, especially under immense pressure, the book gives another powerful example. Johnson & Johnson, during the Tylenol crisis back in 1982, how did clarity help them make a huge trade-off?
It's a landmark case in crisis management, driven by essentialist principles, even if they didn't call it that. When reports first surfaced that Tylenol capsules had been criminally tampered with on store shelves, leading to deaths, J&J faced the ultimate essentialist dilemma.
Protect the product or protect the public.
Exactly. Tylenol was, at the time, their single most profitable product. Protecting the brand and minimizing financial damage seems like one path. The other path was prioritizing customer safety above all else, even if it meant a massive financial hit, a $100 million immediate impact, potentially.
That's a huge decision to make quickly. What gave them the clarity to act?
They had something remarkable. Their credo, written way back in 1943, literally etched in stone at their headquarters, apparently. This credo explicitly listed the company's responsibilities to its various constituents in order of priority.
And the order was?
Customers first, employees second, communities third, and shareholders, interestingly, last.
Shareholders last, wow.
Because this credo wasn't just some dusty mission statement, it was a deeply ingrained part of their culture. It served as an objective, almost pre-decided guide. Faced with the crisis, the path was clear based on the credo. Customer safety had to come first. So they made the incredibly bold and costly decision to recall all Tylenol products nationwide, immediately, accepting that $100 million hit.
And the long-term result of that massive, painful trade-off?
Well, in the short term, it was devastating financially. But by prioritizing customer safety so unequivocally over short-term profits, they built an incredible reservoir of public trust. This allowed them to successfully reintroduce Tylenol later with new tamper-proof packaging, which then became the industry standard. And ultimately, that trust translated into long-term brand loyalty and, yes, eventually benefited the shareholders they had prioritized last on the list.
It's a powerful lesson. Sometimes the most essential trade-off, even if it hurts in the moment, yields the highest and most sustainable returns down the line.
Right. So once you accept that trade-offs are not just possible but actually necessary for real progress, the next critical step is discernment. It's about figuring out where to place your limited time, your limited energy, your limited resources.
Because we tend to operate on this assumption, don't we, that effort and results have this nice, neat, linear relationship. Like if I just work twice as hard, I'll get twice the results.
Exactly. We think it's linear. But the essentialist starts from a radically different place, acknowledging McKeown's stark statement that practically everything is unimportant.
Practically everything is unimportant. That's quite a statement.
It is. And it moves us beyond even the familiar 80-20 rule, the Pareto principle that suggests 20% of your effort yields 80% of your results.
Which already feels pretty skewed.
It does. But the book points towards something potentially even more extreme. The concept of the power law. This suggests that in many domains, the distribution is far more skewed. Think about Nathan Myhrvold's research, I think it was, suggesting that the very top software developers might not just be twice as productive or 10 times as productive, but potentially 10,000 times more productive than an average developer.
10,000 times. That's staggering.
It is. And it implies that it's not just about working harder or longer hours. It's about identifying and executing on that single, incredibly high-leverage activity or insight that produces exponentially greater results than everything else combined.
That's almost, well, it's kind of terrifying, isn't it? Because it implies that most of the things we spend our time doing, even if we're busy and feel productive, are likely very low leverage activities. Wasted effort, almost.
It can feel that way.
Yeah.
The goal, then, for the essentialist isn't just maximizing output. It's seeking out that specific activity, that unique contribution that gives the absolute highest result-to-effort ratio. McKeown uses his own early example, realizing that washing cars paid about 6 times more per hour than his paper route.
Okay, a simple example.
A simple example, but it illustrates the core idea. It's about shifting the equation in your mind from focusing just on time spent or even time versus reward to focusing intensely on time versus results. The essentialist is constantly asking, where can I apply the minimum effective effort to achieve the maximum, maybe even nonlinear impact?
Right. Like his later example in customer service, realizing that the single highest value activity wasn't just processing orders, it was specifically retaining customers who were about to cancel. Focusing on that one thing dramatically changed his results.
Precisely. Getting cancellations down to 0 was worth vastly more than months of just doing the standard generic administrative tasks. That's identifying and exploiting high leverage.
Okay, but here's the challenge. How do you apply this kind of radical discernment when you're faced with, say, 3 or 4 genuinely good options? Most big decisions aren't between something obviously terrible and something obviously great. They're usually between option A, option B, and option C, and they all seem, well, pretty good, maybe a 7 or 8 out of 10.
And that's exactly where the brilliant practical mechanism of the 90% rule comes in.
The 90% rule. Explain that.
It's basically a tool, a filter, designed to enforce extreme selectivity and make those tough trade-offs easier. When you're evaluating any opportunity, a project, a job offer, even a social commitment, maybe even who to hire you, first, define your essential criteria really clearly. Then, you score the option against those criteria on a 0 to 10 scale.
Okay.
Here's the rule. If the option doesn't score at least a 9 out of 10, a clear, enthusiastic yes, this is exactly right, then it's an automatic no.
So anything that's just pretty good, maybe a 7 or an 8?
It's a no. Doesn't matter how promising it seems on the surface or how much you might want it to work or how much temporary social capital you might gain by saying yes. If it's not a definite 9 or 10 against your core criteria, it's out. You reject it.
That feels ruthless, but also incredibly freeing.
It is. Because think about how much cognitive energy we waste agonizing over those 7s and 8s. Should I do it? It's quite good, but maybe not perfect. What are the pros and cons? The 90% rule provides this beautiful constraint. It forces the decision. It removes the agony of deliberation over mediocrity, and it preserves your time, your energy, and your focus for the truly essential opportunities, the 9s and 10s, when they inevitably arrive.
And this isn't just for projects, it applies to people too, like in hiring.
Absolutely. The book gives this fantastic example from the high-end shelving company, Vitso. They were interviewing a candidate for an installer role, a pretty crucial customer-facing position.
Right.
And the guy was technically brilliant. He installed their complex shelving system perfectly during the trial. Flawless execution.
Sounds like a great hire.
You'd think so. But when the hiring team reviewed his performance afterwards, they honed in on one tiny detail. When he was packing up his tools after the installation, he just carelessly threw them back into the toolbox.
Okay. Seems minor.
To most companies, maybe completely irrelevant. Focus on the technical skill, they'd say. But for Vitso, which has this deep culture built around craftsmanship and care, that tiny action signaled a fundamental cultural misalignment. It showed a lack of respect for the tools, a lack of meticulousness that was core to their brand. They turned him down. They said no to an otherwise technically flawless candidate because he wasn't a 9 or 10 on their cultural criteria. That level of extreme selectiveness, driven by a deep conviction about what's truly essential for their company, ensures that everyone they bring in, every project they commit to, is genuinely aligned. They have prioritized that internal coherence over just filling a role quickly. That's radical discernment in action.
Okay, so you've used discernment, you've made your trade-offs, but none of that matters if you don't actually have this sort of the bandwidth, the mental and physical capacity to follow through and execute well. Which brings us to the things the essentialists absolutely must protect. And maybe the first one, the one that gets sacrificed most often in our culture, is sleep.
Oh, absolutely. McKeown calls the widespread belief that you can achieve more by sleeping less a pernicious myth. And I think that's exactly the right word for it, pernicious.
Why pernicious?
Because it's not just wrong, it's actively harmful. Sleep isn't some kind of luxury or an optional activity you can just cut back on when things get busy. It's not an expenditure of time. It's a fundamental investment in your single most important productivity asset, which is yourself, your brain, your body. The core message here is you absolutely must protect the asset.
Protect the asset. And the book uses the story of Jeff, a CEO, as a really stark cautionary tale here.
It's chilling, really. Jeff was this classic high-flying overachiever, constant international travel, relentless schedule, and he was routinely getting by on just 4, maybe 6 hours of sleep a night. Thought he was hacking the system, being super productive.
Until,
at the age of just 36, his body basically said, nope, done. His chronic sleep deprivation had pushed him so far that his organ systems literally started shutting down. He was forced to completely disengage from work, from everything, for over a year just to recover his basic health.
Wow, that's terrifying.
And apparently, when he eventually recovered and started speaking to his peers again, his single most emphatic message was that, protect the asset, don't do what I did.
And it's not just about avoiding breakdown, is it? Sleep is actually linked to peak performance.
Directly linked. Look at Kay Anders Ericsson's famous studies on expertise, particularly the one on elite violinists. What separated the absolute best performers from the merely good ones? It wasn't just practice time. The very best violinists slept, on average, 8.6 hours every single night.
8.6 hours? That's specific.
Plus, they often supplemented that with daytime naps. Sleep is when the brain consolidates learning. It repairs itself. It regenerates the capacity for the intense, focused concentration that's required for deliberate practice and high-leverage work.
It's amazing, isn't it? We sort of celebrate the constantly exhausted, sleep-deprived worker as some kind of hero. Yet there's research, I think, from Harvard showing that being chronically sleep-deprived, say, getting only 4 or 5 hours a night for a week, impairs your cognitive function to the same degree as having a blood alcohol level of 0.1%.
Exactly. We would fire an employee who consistently showed up to work drunk. Of course. Yet, we often implicitly or explicitly reward the employee who shows up chronically sleep-deprived, even though their performance is likely just as impaired. It's a fundamental mismatch.
So protecting sleep is non-negotiable. What else needs protecting?
The essentialist must also proactively, deliberately create space to think, or what the book sometimes calls escape.
Escape? Escape from what?
Escape from the constant barrage of demands, emails, notifications, meetings. Escape from the noise. Because focus, real deep focus, isn't a passive state. It's a verb. It's something you have to do, something you have to actively cultivate and protect. If you just wait for focus to magically happen between meetings or emails,
Yes, it won't.
It won't. You'll lose every time to the immediate, the urgent, the demands of the inbox.
Okay, but practically speaking, how do you enforce that kind of escape in a world that feels like it's built on 24/7 connectivity?
You have to build boundaries, sometimes institutional ones. Look at the example of Frank O'Brien's company, Conversations. They implemented something called Do Not Call Monday.
Do not call Monday.
Yeah, the first Monday of every single month. On that day, there are no internal phone calls allowed, no internal emails, no scheduled agenda, nothing. It's a full day deliberately set aside for quiet reflection, for deep thinking, for unstructured exploration of ideas.
That sounds radical and amazing.
It is. It's kind of the modern corporate equivalent of Sir Isaac Newton supposedly spending 2 years, largely in solitary confinement during the plague years, to focus almost exclusively on developing his Principia Mathematica. You need that kind of unencumbered mental space to synthesize complex information, to make connections, to have those breakthrough insights that lead to the truly essential work.
Okay, so sleep, space. What's the third element of protecting capacity? This one might seem a bit counterintuitive. Play.
Yes, play. And I know it sounds almost contradictory to the idea of a disciplined pursuit, doesn't it? Isn't play just fooling around, wasting time?
That's the common perception.
But McKeown argues, and the science backs this up, that play is absolutely essential. He defines play broadly as any activity done simply for the joy of doing it, without a specific goal or means to an end in mind.
Why is that essential?
Because play is what sparks exploration. It fosters brain plasticity, making us more adaptable. It fuels creativity. There are even studies, fascinating ones, on grizzly bear.
Grizzly bears.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Research showed that the individual bears that engage in the most playful behavior, wrestling, sliding down snowy hills, just messing about, actually survived the longest. The hypothesis is that play made them more adaptable, better able to cope with changing environmental conditions.
Huh. So play isn't frivolous. It actually enhances our ability to adapt and respond to the unexpected, which is pretty crucial when your carefully chosen essential path inevitably hits some kind of roadblock or market shift.
Exactly. And smart businesses are starting to recognize this too. You see innovative companies deliberately incorporating elements of play to foster more flexible thinking. The book mentions Twitter's CEO at the time encouraging improv classes for executives.
Improv. Interesting.
Yeah, because improv forces you to think on your feet, to build on unexpected inputs, to be adaptable. Or think about Pixar. They often start developing a film not with a full script, but with simple storyboards, basically a comic book version of the movie. This allows them to play with story beats, to explore ideas, and crucially, to fail quickly and cheaply before committing massive resources.
So it's a form of low-stakes exploration.
Precisely. Play isn't the opposite of serious work. In many ways, it's the foundation for the kind of lateral thinking, the creative problem solving, the adaptability that allows you to not only find the essential, but also to stick with it, even when things get tough or complicated.
Okay, so we've got clarity on what's essential, we've made the hard trade-offs, we've protected our capacity through sleep, space, and play. The final piece is execution. And the goal here isn't just to do the essential thing, but to do it, as the book suggests, almost effortlessly, through routine.
Exactly. Effortlessly might sound like a stretch, but the idea is making the difficult things feel easier, more automatic. And the genius of routine is how it achieves that biologically. Every time you repeat a specific behavior or thought pattern, you literally strengthen the neural connections associated with it. Routine takes conscious effort and gradually turns it into subconscious automaticity.
It becomes second nature.
It does. And the example of Michael Phelps and his visualization routine is just incredible here.
Right, his coach, Bob Bowman, didn't just focus on the physical training in the pool, he designed this intense mental routine as well. Watching the videotape, they called it.
That's it. For years, apparently, every single night before bed and every morning upon waking, Phelps would meticulously visualize the perfect race, start to finish, in slow motion, feeling the water, hearing the sounds, seeing himself execute every stroke, every turn, flawlessly.
This wasn't just like casual daydreaming about winning.
No, it was deep neural rehearsal, incredibly detailed and consistent. And Bowman said something fascinating about it. He said that by the time Phelps actually stood on the starting block at the Olympics, the real race felt almost like just another step in a pattern that started earlier that day and has been nothing but victories. The physical event was almost just the inevitable outcome of this deeply ingrained, perfected mental and physical routine.
That's the power of making the essential automatic. It reduces friction, reduces decision fatigue in the moment.
Absolutely. And it speaks directly to how we can change habits too, using that classic habit loop framework. Cue, routine, reward. If you want to replace a non-essential habit, say mindlessly checking email first thing in the morning, you don't necessarily have to eliminate the cue, like the sound of your alarm. Instead, you keep the cue, but you consciously change the routine and triggers.
So the alarm goes off, cue, and instead of grabbing the phone, old routine, you immediately pick up, say, an essential book you want to read for 15 minutes. New routine.
Exactly. You leverage the existing trigger, but link it to an essential activity instead of a non-essential one. Over time, that new pathway strengthens.
Routine also helps us focus on the right kind of time, doesn't it? The book mentions the ancient Greeks having two different words for time.
Yes, this is such a useful distinction.
Yeah.
They had chronos, which is the time we usually think about. Quantitative, ticking clock time, the hours in the day, the deadlines, how long did I work?
Okay, chronos. What's the other one?
The other is kairos. Kairos is qualitative time. It's about the opportune moment, the right time, the significance of the present moment. We obsess constantly over managing chronos, squeezing more into the hours. But the essentialist tries to live more in kairos. They ask, am I fully present and making the absolute most of this specific opportune moment right now? Because ultimately, the present moment is the only time we ever truly have.
That sounds profound, but how do you practically shift from that obsessive chronos tracking, did I work 8 hours or 9, to focusing on the quality of the kairos moment, especially when you're in the middle of a stressful project or a crisis?
It often requires an active trigger, a deliberate way to snap yourself back to the present. The book shares this great example from the legendary Highland High School rugby team. They were famous for their incredible decades-long winning streak.
Okay.
And their coach apparently instilled in them a simple, powerful acronym, WIN.
WIN. What did that stand for?
What's important now?
Simple, effective.
Incredibly effective. In the heat of the game, Whenever a player made a mistake or started worrying about the final score or got distracted, that question, what's important now,
Yeah.
immediately pulled their focus back to the single most essential thing, the play they were in right now. Not the fumble 2 minutes ago, not the championship possibility, just this tackle, this pass, this moment.
It acts like an instant mental boundary against all the clutter, the past regrets, the future anxieties.
Exactly. That intense focus on the present prevents that mental drag and allows for that truly frictionless, focused execution we're talking about.
That WIN acronym is brilliant for mental boundaries. But maybe the hardest boundaries for any aspiring essentialist to set are the social ones.
Yeah.
Specifically, the incredibly difficult act of saying no.
Yes. This is where the book talks about needing courage, the courage to dare, as it puts it. And it makes a really insightful point here. We often assume that people who are good at saying no are just naturally assertive, maybe even a bit abrasive.
Right, they just don't care what people think.
But think about the example of Rosa Parks. The book mentions that, by nature, she was apparently quite shy and timid. Early in her activism, she even felt too timid to say no to a simple request to serve as a secretary for an organization.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yet her incredibly courageous refusal to give up her seat on that bus wasn't born from some innate assertiveness. It grew out of a profound, deep conviction about the essential moral choice she needed to make in that specific Kairos moment.
So the courage to say no or to set a boundary, it doesn't necessarily come from personality type. It comes from clarity and conviction about what is truly essential.
Precisely. Your conviction fuels your courage. But let's be realistic. Especially in a work context, dealing with managers or senior leaders, just a blunt no might not always be the wisest approach. It could be perceived badly, maybe even be career-limiting in some environments. We need the graceful no.
Okay, tactics for the graceful no. What does the book suggest?
Well, one simple but effective tactic is simply buying yourself time. Instead of feeling pressured into an immediate reactive yes, or even a harsh no, when someone makes a request, especially in person or on a call, you could just say something neutral like, "That sounds interesting. Let me check my calendar and my current priorities and I'll get back to you."
So you separate the request from the decision.
Exactly. It takes the immediate social pressure off. It gives you space to go away, think about it, maybe apply the 90% rule, and then formulate a considered response rather than an impulsive one.
Okay, that makes sense. What's another tactic maybe for dealing with those leaders who just keep piling more tasks onto your plate?
This one is perhaps the most powerful essentialist countermove. It involves gently but firmly forcing the trade-off back onto the person making the request.
How does that sound in practice?
You could say something like, "Yes, I understand this is important and I'm happy to make it a priority. To ensure I can give it the proper focus it deserves, could you help me understand which of my current top 3 projects, A, B, or C, should be deprioritized to make space for this new task?"
Ooh, I like that. Yes. What should I deprioritize?
It's key because it does a few things. 1, it shows you're willing and engaged. 2, it frames the new task as requiring focus, which is good. But 3, and most importantly, it forces the senior leader, or whoever is making the request, to explicitly confront the reality that resources, your time and focus, are finite. They are requesting a trade-off, not just a simple addition to an infinitely expandable list. You're protecting your ability to deliver high quality on your most essential work by making them own the decision about what gets sacrificed.
That stops the non-essentialist default, doesn't it? Where you just kind of absorb the new work, say yes to everything, and then your quality suffers across the board because you're spread too thin.
Exactly. And one more quick tactic, especially useful in our digitally overloaded world, setting clear boundaries around communication itself. Instead of just ignoring emails or messages when you need to focus, which can seem rude, you can use tools like auto-replies or focus mode notifications proactively.
Like an email signature that says,
Something like, "Thank you for your message. I am currently focused on Project X until 3 p.m. to ensure its timely completion. I will be checking and responding to emails after that time. If your matter is urgent, please contact Tactum," whatever the backup is. It sets a clear professional boundary, explains the why, protecting essential work, and manages expectations. People generally respect a boundary that's clearly stated and reasonable, much more than one that feels like stonewalling or just being ignored. So when you pull all these pieces together, the choice, the discernment, protecting your capacity, the execution through routine and focus, what you end up with is the essentialist life. And ultimately, this disciplined pursuit, it really is the path to genuine freedom.
It sounds a bit contradictory, doesn't it? Discipline leading to freedom.
It does on the surface, but think about it. By actively setting boundaries, by ruthlessly enforcing those trade-offs, by getting crystal clear on your single highest point of contribution, you achieve this unparalleled level of control over your own time, your own energy, your own life. You stop being constantly controlled by other people's agendas, other people's emergencies, other people's problems. That's freedom.
It shifts you, like you said earlier, from being just a passenger in your own life, swept along by whatever currents come your way, to actually being the pilot, deliberately charting the course.
Precisely. And this pursuit, this way of operating, it ensures that the effort you do expend results in meaningful progress on the things that truly matter to you, not just frantic activity. McKeown argues pretty convincingly that it's only with this kind of clarity, this kind of focused mobilization, that individuals and organizations too can really achieve something truly excellent, something significant, something they can look back on without that nagging feeling of regret, thinking, what if I'd focused more on what mattered? And there's a deep personal satisfaction that comes from that, I believe. You move away from saying yes out of obligation or fear or desire to please everyone. Instead, you start saying yes only when you genuinely deeply believe that this opportunity, this commitment, is the absolute highest and best use of your precious time and unique talents. You start to feel proud of the life you're intentionally choosing, moment by moment, day by day.
So for anyone listening who feels overwhelmed right now, maybe stretched too thin, or just suspects deep down that they might be majoring in minor activities, let the core wisdom of this essentialist philosophy be a guide to start living a life with more purpose, more impact, and ultimately less regret whenever you're faced with a decision, big or small, a challenge, a crossroads. There's really just one final, deceptively simple question you need to ask yourself.
What is essential? And then find the clarity, the conviction, and the courage to eliminate everything else.
That's today's breakdown. While this discussion cannot replace the book's full text, it can offer a glimpse into its teachings. I hope you found this discussion helpful, and I look forward to sharing more. Let me know what book next you want to discuss.